Alright, welcome back to Project Ram Raider, 1988 Dodge Raider behind me. This is my rebuild series, episode 20. Can you believe it? 20 episodes. When I started this project, I was expecting just to fix the ticking motor and maybe clean it up and have a couple of episodes, but we are 20 deep on this bad boy. And we're getting towards the end of it. We are breaking through the clouds, transitioning from IFR to VFR. We can see the ground just a little bit. This week I made some progress. I worked quite a bit on some peripheral items. I put brake fluid in the car and bled the brakes, and then moved to installing the radiator and the condenser for the AC and the air conditioning lines. And I broke out the vacuum to pull a vacuum on the AC system to see if it was holding the vacuum or if it had any leaks. Okay, I'm fixing to put some brake fluid in the car and bleed the system. And there's a couple of ways that I like to bleed the car brakes, especially by myself. And the first way is, of course, to get a kit. Comes with a reservoir that you put brake fluid into, and then you fill this up with brake fluid, and then you pump up pressure. This pressurizes and pushes brake fluid into the system to a capture can that plugs into each wheel. So when you go back and break the bleeder valve, it bleeds into each capture can, and this maintains pressure and pushes it through the system. That's a great way to do it. However, the downside is you have to have a unique cap, master cylinder cap, for whatever car you're working on. For example, this one here fits on a BMW. I've got one for a Mazda, but I don't have one for this car. And every car you work on, you need a new cap that attaches to the master cylinder reservoir, and it's made specifically for that car. So I only use this on a couple of cars, or whenever I buy a new cap. So my preferred method for bleeding brakes, and always has been, is to jerry-rig your own can and attach it to a shop vac. What I mean by that is you just grab any old plastic container and you attach a shop vac vacuum line to the top, and then this attaches to your wheel. So when you turn your shop vac on, this goes under pressure and pulls a vacuum on the line at each wheel, pulling fluid into this. The only thing you have to do is maintain fluid in your master cylinder, your reservoir. If that runs dry, you have to start over because it sucks air into the lines. But this is my preferred method because I don't have to have any special tools. It will work on any car, and it's actually pretty quick. So I will show you how I do it right now. Alright, I'm going to put the skid plates underneath the transfer case and transmission here. If I can remember how they attach. It goes here. Or does it go like this? It goes there. This one goes right here. Okay, attaching the oil cooler lines to the bottom of the radiator. This car comes with an external, a second external transmission cooler that sits in front of the radiator, so that hooks up also, but I'll do that from the bottom. So next I'll put the fan and the fan shroud in. Then we can work on the belts. Okay, as you can see, I got the fan in, no problem. Having a little bit of issue with these, the fan shroud bolts. There's 4 of them, 2 on each side. They seem to be the wrong bolt for the captive nut that's attached to the radiator. And all 4 of them are cross-threaded. So what I'm going to have to do is go down and buy the proper metric bolt and a tap. I'm going to tap the holes out and put in a fresh bolt, because they're all kind of stripped a little bit. I don't want to force them, so we'll work on that tomorrow. Okay, I'm fixing to put the hoses on, and sometimes depending on the condition of the nozzle, this one's got a little bit of texture to it, so I'm going to put a little bit of gasket maker on there just to seal any possible leaks. And I won't do it on this side. This side's smooth, but anytime there's like any type of imperfections on the housing, All right, next is the AC belt. This one just came in the mail. Ordered off of eBay for about 10 bucks less than they wanted at the auto parts store. There. Our belt's on now. Alright, here's the exhaust manifold that I was fixing to put on tonight. However, I put a straight edge down the face of it here, and it's warped a little bit. It's only supposed to be 6/1000ths out to be good still, and this one's quite a bit farther. If you put a straight edge on that, you can rock it back and forth, so the center is kind of high. So I'm going to take this down to the machine shop tomorrow and have them surface this right here. Take a little bit of metal off and make it flat again. Because there's no sense in putting this on there, put a new gasket, and then have it eventually leak out one of the sides here. You can tell that whoever was running this before, it's been had exhaust leaks on both ends for quite a while. Just black charred, blasting out both sides, so that makes it much noisier. So we'll get that fixed tomorrow. They'll surface it, and then I'll put it on next week. Alright, I'm just straightening up some fins here, getting ready to clean this up and paint it. This is the air conditioning condenser. Alright, we're going to start the process of putting this air conditioning system together. I've got about 6 or 8 hoses that have to go here and there, and I got to figure out where they all go. So to start with, Okay, I'm of course replacing all the O-rings for the entire air conditioning system. Just have to match them up on the size chart here and find the one that fits best. There you go, just replacing the O-rings on all the joints. Fixing to put this in the car. Okay, you can see the process of attaching the hoses to the AC compressor. One down here and one right here. And they go to the condenser up front here. We're going to start attaching lines that go across here, and then we're going to put the fan on the front. That'll be coming up next. So I have a propensity not to tighten anything up when I'm working on a certain system. And that's so you can move everything around, but I always kind of forget to go back and tighten everything. So I have to remember that once all the AC is in, I got to hit each joint along the way and make sure everything's tight. Alright, I'm fixing to put the fan on the front of this thing. I forgot to hit record when I refurbished this. All I really did is just I cleaned it up, and I replaced the foam that goes around the fan that touches the radiator, or in this case the condenser, because the original was just super brittle. You could touch it and it would just break right off. So I bought some weather stripping down at the hardware store for windows, the same dimensions as what was on here, and it sticks right on there. So next we're gonna attach this to the car and start routing some of the AC lines around it. Fixing to put on a couple more AC lines here, and I just noticed that the threads on this tube here are really badly stripped. It looks like it's only going to be able to grab one or two thread grooves there, so that's unfortunate. What I'll do is I'll put it together, I'll pressure test it, and then I'll be on the lookout for a new one of these, I suppose. I'll put a vacuum on the system and let it sit overnight and see if it loses any vacuum. So generally speaking, you want to replace your dryer if the system has been broke apart for too long. This contains a material that captures moisture, kind of like those pebbles that you find in a box of shoes when you buy new tennis shoes. And what it does is it captures moisture in the system. If it doesn't capture moisture, the moisture will freeze right at your orifice tube or up in your cabin, wherever it sprays into your evaporator, and it will clog the system up. So this captures moisture in the system. If this is exposed to air for too long, I don't know what the time is, I would say days maybe, it starts to capture air or moisture out of the air and it fills itself up. So anytime the system's broke apart for very long, replace the dryer. They're not that expensive. I think this was about 10, 12 bucks, something like that. Comes capped, so you want to uncap it right before you put it together and then put a vacuum on the system. That's what we'll do right now. Okay, we're going to hook the air conditioning system up to a manifold here and vacuum out the system, put it under vacuum with this little vacuum pump. You hook it to a compressor. Going to pull the air out of the system and watch the gauge go down, and then we're going to let it sit for an hour and see if it moves at all. If there's any leaks, you'll notice it by the needle moving around, so that's what we're going to work on next. I installed the center pod there. It looks real nice, and the that bubble level is working good now. And then I spent some time working on the belts. I installed all the pulley belts and hooked up the transmission cooler. A few other odds and ends, and then I started tearing into the seats, the upholstery. I'm going to reupholster, at least partially reupholster the front seats. So I broke out the sewing machine and got things set up to do some sewing, and started taking the front seats apart. So I bought material for part of the seats, and I was going to try to save the pattern, the darker colored pattern on the lower part of the seats. But they're pretty stained and dirty, so I don't know, we'll see. I'm going to clean them up and see how they clean up. I spent some time trying to find the appropriate pattern for this car, and I haven't yet found anything online that matches it perfectly. So if the stains don't come out, if it still looks terrible, then we'll have to rethink about trying to find some new material. We're gonna clean this shock absorber seat up and maybe paint it, re-grease it. It's all dusty and dirty and grimy. So we'll set that aside, get back to that, and then I'm gonna work on this seat now. So this checkered area, I'm going to try to clean up and save because it's kind of a hard pattern to find, and it matches the back seat, although it's definitely grimier. I'm going to replace the top tan section with new material, and I'm going to keep the vinyl most likely because none of it's torn or ripped. Okay, these are the seat tracks. They'll get cleaned up and re-greased. They look like they're in pretty good shape. Set those aside. And here's the bottom seat cushion, and I can already see one spring is broke, so I will fix that. Do some welding on it, and then we'll tear this apart and clean it up. Well, it's pretty dry rotted, definitely. I can't tell if somebody's been in here to repair this corner or whether that's factory. I'll have to look at the other side. there's the broken spring right there. So I will repair that with some parts I have. So I'll take a look at this and we'll maybe put a 1/4 inch foam over that to kind of bolster the seat a bit. Okay, there's the top seat cover. And I'm going to try to save this bottom section even though it's super stained. There's no tears or rips or even burn marks. So I'm going to try to use that detergent that I bought and really try to get it clean to see if I can match the original color. We're going to replace this top part. Really easy, and then I'm going to try to save the vinyl. I mean, I could probably replace the vinyl if I had to. There's almost no tears, it's just stained. I'm going to try to clean it up. But very easy to do. All you do is turn it inside out. You sew all your upholstery inside out so that all your seams are on the inside. And since I'm just replacing panels instead of creating a new design, all you do is just take apart this seat and then cut a pattern. Use the old piece as a pattern for the new material. So I'm going to cut off this section here. I'll leave everything else. And then the new material will get sized to that size, and I'll sew it back in, and it'll be perfectly good, assuming I can get the rest of it to come clean. Or I can just buy some tan vinyl and create a new seat. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Boy, that's just falling apart. Look at that. And then as I was working on that today, I had the UPS truck driver stop by and dropped off several more items, some carburetor parts and the inline fuel filter. I ordered a couple of fuel regulators this week because the Weber carb needs about 2.5 pounds of pressure, and the stock fuel pump puts out about 4.5 to 6. So I've got a couple of fuel regulators showing up. I also ordered some vintage fog lights or driving lights. They showed up, so I'll install those once I put the front bumper on. Alright, a few more parts came in today. I was waiting on these, a few carburetor parts and whatnot. So I started to get ready for the upholstery. I'm going to sew that front seat together. So even though these showed up, I'll probably just wait and do the seats first and then get back to this carb. So we have a handful of carburetor linkage, cable linkages and whatnot, so I can finish that carburetor out. Cool. There's our fuel filter. That'll work just fine. Okay, we had some parts come in today. These are some cable attachment points that I'm going to use in place of what I mocked up here. I'm going to take this bracket out and put the better swivel attachments to this cable and to this one right here. And then I'm going to replace this string right down here with something a little bit better. I'm also waiting for a couple of fuel regulators, because this carburetor apparently likes about 2.5 pounds of pressure. This fuel pump here puts out about 4.5 to 6, so it's going to overpower the carb. So I got a couple of regulators coming in, and these cars have a return line. So one of the regulators that I have puts out 2.5 pounds to the carb, and the rest of it will get kicked back to the fuel tank. So once that shows up, I will show you how we route the lines to the regulator, which will sit here, and then up to the carburetor and back to the fuel tank. One of the last things I'm going to do is fire the engine up, because much like Schroeder's cat, right now nothing's wrong with it. It's perfectly fine. Once I start it up, then we'll find out all the mistakes I made and how badly it leaks, or even if it'll run. But if I don't try to start it up, then I don't have anything to worry about. Also, one of the very last things I'm going to do is some more paint work. We're going to spend some time massaging the hood. A couple of dents I want to pull out of the hood, and then we'll give the hood and probably the front fenders a paint job, front valance. And then there's a handful of other items I'm going to paint. I've got the rear view mirrors, outside mirrors, the bumper, and a few other odds and ends, front skid plate, that type of stuff. That'll all get painted and put on last. But we're coming down to it. I'd say probably just a couple more episodes, 2-3 episodes, we should have this thing on the road. So yeah, that's what we did this week. Episode 20, check back next week, and we'll keep you updated. Bye.